I'll be connected.
Yes, but then again, there's always some slack on the timing. So if someone uses more time for the discussion, maybe it's not 30 minutes early, but it's 15 minutes early.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. I'll be connected, so I'll wait for your signal and,
Okay,
to present.
good.
Okay, thank you.
See you
Thank
then.
you. See you.
Ja. Enn hvis jeg snakker ja, ha-ha. Får du meg inn i ørene der nå? Hei, hei, hei. Hvorfor er det ja, det er den? Hei, hei, hei. Ja, ha-ha. Hvordan nivået til deg nå, da? Har du noe lavt, ja? Ja, men har du muligheten til å veksle mellom mikk eller linje på det kameraet ditt, da? Hva står det på nå, da? Linje? Ja, det skal i utgangspunktet være greit, det, da. Hei, 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 hei. Skal vi se her, da. Ja. Hvis du nå setter den på nå står den på line, ja. Og så setter den på har de inn der nå, da? Nå er det på maks. Ja. Hei, hei, hei. Men hvis vi gjør sånn, da. Hvor svart er der nå, da? Fikk du noe mer lyd der nå? Ja, haha. Men jeg kan sende deg mer. Det er ikke noe problem for meg å sende deg mer lyd. For du har hei, hei, hei. Ja. Ja, det var litt lavt. Men er det trafoen som gjør det? Vi kan sjekke. Vi kan prøve å koble forbi trafoen. Er det høyere lyd der nå? Inn på kameraet. Hei, 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 hei. Det er like mye lyd der nå. Pluss masse støy. Nå er det fint. Så du vil bare ha mer lyd, du. Så hvis jeg nå gjør sånn, da, og så kan vi ta opp enda mer hvis vi gjør sånn. Hvordan er det der, da? Hei, hei, hei. Ja, 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 det der må jo være bra.
Det har vært så mye støy.
Masikira. Yeah, I see. Seventeen, 18, 19, bobo. Ìṣèlórí ló fi ṣeré. 17, 18, 19, bobo. Ìṣèlórí ló fi ṣeré.
thy grave. It's
our colleagues canceled, so we have one presentation before a 20-minute break. We'll have a longer break afterwards. So we're starting with Thijs Ham, and his presentation is entitled Multiple Minds, and we'll begin with a performance. And Thijs asked me to warn you that there will be flashing lights. So if you have a problem with that, you should get out. Okay.
as part of the Greek Academy, or the middle part of CoMD, which stands for music. That's a good idea. All right, is this working? Excellent. So, my name is Thijs Ham. I'm doing a PhD in artistic research at the University of Bergen. and I'm here to present one of the sort of first outcomes of this this research, which is called multiple minds. So maybe I tell a little bit about what my research entails, and yeah, some interesting factors that I've come across, which kind of explains this title as well, and what I've been doing on stage prior to this sudden transition to talking. So I'm in the field of live electronics, which in my case means that I build and design new electronic instruments. I also use some compositional strategies. The reason why I frame this in a careful way will become clear later. And I also perform with these instruments. But I want to start out with a few quotes. So here, as a performer, one can choose to put oneself in situations where a performance system will surprise not only the audience, but also oneself. So in concert situations, it may be preferable to lose control if this loss can be made meaningful by gaining influence. This from a paper written by Alberto de Campo, published in the ICMC. One word that's for me is very important here is the word surprise, which is one of the things that I'm very interested in my musical practice. Being surprised, or running into surprises. Here another one. Unpredictability of the instrument requires an attitude of obedience and resignation to the system and the sounds it produces. And again, a reference to surprise in the music. This time from Toshimaru Nakamura, who's a Japanese live electronics artist focusing on no input mixing. So basically taking analog mixers and plugging the outputs back into the inputs, creating feedback loops. This is found from his biography on his website. And going back a little bit further in time, I try to find out what's there, not to make it do what I want, but to release what's there. The object should teach you what it wants to hear. This coming from David Tudor, one of the early pioneers in live electronics, first in collaboration with John Cage, and later in his own compositions and pieces in live electronics, where again he was using a lot of these kind of feedback system, producing a lot of smaller effect boxes that were chained up in particular ways to create feedback and feedback pieces with that. One of the things that binds us all together is this word surprise. So the particular focus of my research is into the use of chaotic processes in the sound, allowing me to create instruments that I don't necessarily control, but that have a capability to surprise me, that can take me on these kind of sonic journeys where I can discover parts of the sort of sonic landscape of the instrument that I might not have been aware of that existed before stepping on stage. It's always interesting performing these kinds of instruments. When I step on stage, I don't actually know what is going to happen when I switch it on, when it starts producing music, which can be a daunting thing or a scary thing if you're sort of accustomed to this idea of being in control of something. But if you're sort of more focused on curiosity, having the curiosity mindset of, hey, I'm going to explore this instrument and explore its possibilities, then it becomes a whole different thing. And you step on stage with a completely different mindset. So my research is kind of focused on chaos, specifically tipping points in chaotic systems. So in this case, I've built this synthesizer which I consider to be like one of the first prototypes that have come out of my research. And with this, it's actually a relatively simple circuit that is inside of here. It's an analog synth. It consists of 3 oscillators, and each oscillator has the ability to modulate the other. So if you have 3 of them and they all are interconnected, this kind of cross modulation, you can already get to this point where there's no way that you can predict what the sonic output is going to be. So this idea of unpredictability is really important in my work, and it has consequences that kind of echo through my entire practice. So for one, I'm an instrument builder. So how do you build an instrument where you don't know exactly what the sonic capabilities are going to be at the end of it? As a performer, how do you get better at playing an instrument that reacts differently to your inputs every time you play it? Even during a concert, like if I move one of these knobs or faders back and forth, it's no guarantee that the sound will go back to where it was before I moved it, because it's a recursive system. So it has some sort of memory. The prior sound is part of what makes the current sound happen, if that makes any sense. And when I'm performing with these kind of instruments, I kind of view them as being actant technology. I kind of stole this idea a little bit from a book on improvisation, where they listed various different factors that could contribute to an improvisation. This is one chapter on technology as an actant in improvisations, where Paul Kranen and Kathy van Eck are discussing their piece Tubes, which uses microphone feedback through tubes. And I felt a lot of connection to the way they were talking about how the technology would surprise them during performances. Even though their composition was sort of scripted, there was always this element of like, well, this is kind of the score, but still you have to continually listen and adapt to the way that the piece unfolds in a particular time. So yeah, this is the first instrument that I've built. As I discussed earlier, I have these 6 knobs, and each one this sort of allows you to control the amount of influence from one oscillator to the other. Then there's these 3 faders, which kind of set a frequency. And this is the only thing that actually is quite reliable, which is the volume fader. So I can start and stop things. I actually don't do that much with it during performances. I just open it up and close it at some point. The interesting thing is that when I turn this knob, it will change something in the second oscillator. But the second oscillator is changing things in this oscillator, which is then changing things in this oscillator again. So every performative input kind of echoes through the entire instrument, to a certain extent, turning it into a different kind of instrument. Which brings me to the following word, intention. So when I'm performing on stage, I can't really predict what this thing is going to do. So I can't come in with this idea, okay, I'm now going to play this melody, because I don't know if this melody is going to come out. And at the same time, this machine has its own kind of agency, which is also incomplete, because it's dependent on what my actions are. And the circuit inside is completely deterministic. So it will execute whatever I put in. It's just that the output of that is, it's impossible to foresee what the outcome is going to be of any of these interactions. So in a sense, both myself and the instruments are playing without knowing what the result of that act of play is going to be. So now I'm going to sort of get into slightly more dangerous waters. So if you think of interaction as the kind of standard way of working with electronic instruments, for instance, you have a filter. If you put the knob in one way, the filter is open and all the sound comes through. If you put the knob in the other way, all the sound gets filtered away. It's a very predictable way of working and a predictable way of interacting with an instrument. But taking some inspiration from Karen Barat, this type of interaction could be maybe be seen as an intra-action, where I go into the interaction with incomplete ideas, and this object has its own agency, which is also incomplete. And only through the act of play can we sort of discover what the outcome is going to be. So in a similar sense, instead of thinking about this as an interface where I have knobs and faders that have specific functionalities, I can think of this as an intraphase. It is a way for me to engage in play without knowing in advance what the outcome of that play is going to be. And in that sense, I kind of get to the core question of this performance multiple minds, is where's the artistic mind? Is it me as the designer of the instrument, as the performer, or is it the technology perhaps? And in the case of multiple minds, there's also this computer that's processing the input or listening to the input through these cables and processing that in yet another sort of process that I can't fully control. So I'm kind of positioning myself in this field between human and non-human agencies that together work towards a performance that always has this kind of element of surprise and element of uncertainty in it, which is exactly the thing that I'm interested in artistically. So yeah, that sums up my presentation. So if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Thijs. That was very interesting. I'm sure there'll be some questions, comments. People are still digesting their lunch. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Just wonder if you could tell us more about the visual aspect that was going on during your performance.
Yeah, so as I just mentioned at the end, the computer is listening to this instrument at the same time that I'm listening to the sounds. So these three wires that come out of there are the individual oscillators. And then there's this one cable, which is the main output. So as you could see, there were these three layers to the visuals, which is basically controlled by each individual oscillator. And it's kind of mapped to different color settings, different brightness settings. And there are some sort of slightly abstract photography underneath that switches around. For me, the visuals are because my music is completely abstract and very much in this kind of noisy region. There might be melodies coming out, there might be harmonies coming out, but it's never quite clear what the form is. I feel like having this kind of visual element can kind of, on the one hand, illustrate this kind of idea of these three elements that are interacting, and at the same time kind of draw audiences into the performances where sound alone might be a little bit daunting, but to have some sort of reactive visuals, I've noticed in reactions to my pieces, helps them to kind of make sense of the abstractness of it.
At the end, when you made it high pitch, did you control it to go all high pitch, or did it oscillate onto itself to go higher and higher?
Because these the synthesis that I'm using is sawtooth based, and the oscillators are basically go beyond the limits of human hearing. So it goes from very low frequency oscillating to very high frequency oscillations, and they're interacting. So there's quite often this tendency of having these sort of slowly rising sounds that go up and up. In this case, it was already doing that, but I tried to accentuate that because I was looking at my clock and noticing that I still wanted to have enough time to do this presentation afterwards. So I was trying to work towards some sort of high-pitched climax.
Yeah,
After
I was
which I could-
expecting and waiting to see how high pitch it will go. And
Yeah. The thing is, when these sawtooths get to the end of their ramp, they sort of plummet back down quite rapidly. So in this case, it sort of seemed to work out, but there's other cases where I was like, yeah, and now, and then it was too late. And then you, just have to deal with the new reality.
Yeah, so
First of all, well, I think it's a very nice instrument and beautiful sound. So,
thank you.
Well, it's someone who's also very interested in this notion of unpredictability. And I was just wondering, since you mentioned about improvisation, how will you handle this level of complexity in general in the context of improvising with other musicians in an ensemble context?
Yeah, it's. I'm in the fortunate position of being in this PhD program where in Bergen we basically all have our offices in the same building right next to each other, which makes it incredibly easy for me to just knock on someone's door and say like, hey, I'm working on something, wanna have a short jam. And it's super interesting how that how that works. First, I always have to explain what type of instruments I'm working with, because there's usually a lot of expectations that if you've played something that you could repeat that, which is not always possible. Sometimes it happens accidentally, but I can't say like, okay, we're gonna play that same bit again. That's impossible with these kinds of instruments. Furthermore, it has to be musicians that are used to listening and used to reacting to the sonic environment that they're in. Otherwise, for me, it doesn't quite work musically. But what I really love about working with these chaotic systems is that although it is unpredictable, it's not unplayable. So there are these kind of regions that are semi-stable or kind of these stable orbits that you can play around with a little bit. And the more you play with these kind of instruments, the more you kind of get this instinct into how stable or unstable the sounds are and how easily they will collapse, or if there's some sort of region that you can play around. And those kind of instincts are what I use in these improvisation settings. So whereas if it would be completely random, there wouldn't be anything to sort of interact with. If it was completely predictable, that would mean that I'm failing at my PhD. But this middle ground is like unpredictable but still playable is what I'm most interested in.
yeah, I was just curious about what kind of processing you do in your computer afterwards. Like, is it mainly to control like filters and limiter, or do you do actual sound like?
It's a combination of live sampling, filtering, and a little bit of cleanup.
Okay.
Cleanup is necessary because this thing on its own could potentially just send out some sort of prolonged DC signals that might blow up speakers. So I do a little bit of post-processing to make it sure that I don't accidentally blow up PAs. I think the people in the back appreciate that. Yeah, that's about it. I also keep the original sound, also sort of goes through, just a little bit of cleanup, but yeah, so it's a combination of processed, live sampled, and the original output.
It was really just a comment. Thanks, first of all, for very nice performance. I was just thinking how your talk echoed a lot of what I reflected on about playing with the radios. I'm not sure if you were here Monday morning, but
no, yeah, I was teaching yesterday in Bergen, so I just flew in this morning. I'm deeply sorry for not being
but
aware.
It was really interesting to see all those parallels. I mean, in our observations about how it was to play this instrument and different kind of modes of playing and playability versus not having control. By
yeah, we should talk.
And there'll be time for that now because we have a 20-minute break. Is that right, Arvid? Okay. See you in a bit.
Yeah, thank you.
reflections of city lights. But you're far away at sea, above the satellites, and I run away. What am I gonna do with you if you go back? You're a runaway. What am I gonna do with you if you go back? And when the harbor master tells to switch off the lights, switch off the lights, and the waiting rooms are empty of everyone. Does anyone? What am I gonna do with you if you go back? Does anyone? What am I gonna do with you if you go back? Does anyone see? You left out all the wrong. Does anyone see? You gotta go back. When the only way home is a certain star. It's a certain star. When the backside view of you is Saturday. And anyway, what am I gonna do with you if you go back? Does anyone? What am I gonna do with you if you go back? Does anyone see? You left out on the wrong. You made yourself a cross. You gotta go back. What am I gonna do with you if you go back? What am I gonna do with you if you go back? What am I gonna do with you if you go back? What am I gonna do with you if you go back?
Okay, so we're resuming, and for the two last sessions of the afternoon, the second session will be by video conference, but luckily our first presenter is with us, and indeed she looks colorful. Anina Rust, Rust, so pronounce,
Yes.
who's presenting about the bad mother and the good mother.
Okay.
We're all good mothers, though.
Yes, everyone is. Okay. Hello. Hi. Hello. Whoa. Yes. Okay. So, hello. My name is Anina Rust. In Swiss German it's pronounced Rust. In German it's pronounced Rust. And in English, I'm Anina Rust. So I work at Florida Atlantic University, where I'm an associate professor of art. And so today I'm going to show you Bad Mother, Good Mother. It's a performance that I'm going to be performing. So I feel like I'm performing because I'm wearing my costume. And indeed, this is kind of like, it's a performance about motherhood and the workplace. And, this happens to be my workplace. So let's go. All right. So this is a standard Medela breast pump. It's one of the interfaces that I use in this performance. It's the main part of it. It's the part that makes the sound. And the pump appears throughout the performance, either as a solo instrument or as part of an arrangement. You will hear it. So this shows the setup that I have here, in case you're curious. Oops. Okay, this is even more uncomfortable than my costume. Okay, I don't know if I'm holding this. Okay, I'll just speak into it like this. Okay, so we have a laptop, we have the breast pump, which is in a case that I made, and then it has some lights for effect. And there's the laptop. There's also a MIDI keyboard, but I'm mostly using the knobs. I bought it thinking that I would use everything, and I found the knobs the most fitting and the most sort of useful part of it. And there's also a Focusrite Claret for it's the preamplifier. Anything else? No, that's basically it. So the breast pump is amplified using two microphones. They're just like standard microphones. And then it goes into the Focusrite, gets amplified there, then goes into my computer. And that's where other things happen, which I'll explain later. Okay, so this slide shows stills from the first song of the performance. So the performance is divided into 4 parts. It's divided into 4 parts that I call songs, but you may have different opinions. So I have to put a disclaimer that all of this is found footage. So like I found this on YouTube, on Google, etc. And so in this performance, I treat the breast pump not as a sonic curiosity, but as a technology that has politics. So an interface that has politics. And these politics might not be immediately visible or audible to somebody who has never used a breast pump or looks at it purely as a machine that makes odd sounds. So that is also because most pumping doesn't happen in public, it happens behind closed doors. So if you've had a child and you pumped, you probably didn't do this in public, because although it's really accepted to like breastfeed in public, pumping in public is not really accepted. So I know I've done it, so or I've had to do it because there were no other places. Anyway, so the breast pump is first and foremost a technology designed for women, and often it's used in the workplace behind closed doors. And this is fundamentally a performance about the workplace. I'm using workplace lactation as a departure point to uncover step-by-step a set of social expectations regarding what ideal and non-ideal motherhood is. And that doesn't matter whether you have children or not. I think all women are to a certain extent subjected to that. So being a good mother or a bad mother is not about some sort of absolute state, but rather based on a set of expectations and messages that society has for women in the workplace. So I start with a song about pumping at work and then transition into a song about maternity leave and politicians professing how valuable women are. The third song deals with the business of freezing eggs. So this is a technology that allows women to extend fertility. How long is not exactly clear. So businesses, however, are pushing this technology onto women at so-called egg freezing parties. And this is a song, this third song is an ironic party song along Daft Punk's Get Lucky. And I call this song Daft Pump. So the fourth song is again with the breast pump as a solo instrument. So it starts with the breast pump as a solo instrument, it ends with the breast pump as a solo instrument. And in the last song, I put some filters over it. And the visuals show the repetitiveness of the pumping routine. So at the Feminist Festival that I just performed in Toronto, it's a feminist art festival, somebody described the performance as building an audiovisual argument. And that is pretty much how I would like to have it understood. Not necessarily, I mean, you can understand it however you want. In general, reactions, so I've performed this several times, like quite a few times, and some of you have already seen this in other similar events. And so the reactions generally vary. So like women typically know, even if I'm not like talking about it before, women typically know what this is about, whereas like sort of like the reaction between for men, like the overall sort of understanding like varies, let's say. So this is a software setup. So it's just, you may recognize this. This is Max. This is Ableton. It's not very complicated. So this is the first song. There's really nothing much. I play a video. I play the breast bump to it. The second song is a little bit more complicated, but it's mostly made up of pre-made things. So I recorded, or I sort of prepared some of these sound snippets myself, but most of it is, this is from an Ableton tutorial. So it's very much like a collage of like existing technologies and existing visuals. It's very much a collage. This is the third song, which is Daft Punk's Get Lucky. And basically this is the breast pump. So the breast pump is vocoded into it. So there's a vocoder, and like one of these is the breast pump, one of these instruments. And then, so where Daft Pump would be singing, it's the pump that's playing. And this is the last project, and it has some filters that I didn't make either. And so here's a confession. So there are some, like it's all one performance, but there are audio snippets that play while I'm like behind the scenes frantically trying to change the Ableton project, because basically as part of my Ableton beginner exercises, I never figured out how to put all my songs in one project, and how to gracefully transition. So basically what happens, and what you will hear, is there will be clips that play that allow me to like frantically change the project. So yes, so you know all my secrets now. And last but not least, this is the costume. So yeah. So this is like what you would wear, not this obviously, but like this is how you how you pump breast milk, right? You have like bottles attached to yourself. And like you don't probably see this unless you've pumped yourself, or like your partner has pumped, or you have some other connection to this. You've probably not seen this very much. So the reason why it has LEDs is because pumping is a profoundly unglamorous activity. It's, you know, again, it's not really seen very much in public, and, you know, it's almost the same activity as breastfeeding, but it's not as accepted because I guess it doesn't involve another human, but a machine. So anyway, so what I'm doing here is to a certain extent bring the breast pump into the public. So yeah, that concludes the talking part of this performance. After the performance, I have a question for you. So not about the performance itself, but about like related works. So maybe actually I can post the question now so you have time to think about it. So I'm interested in other artists or composers doing work with domestic tools, technologies, etc. Composers, musicians, whatever. I mean, we have an interdisciplinary audience here. And so I'm interested in examples. I brought a paper and a pen ready to write it down. So first I'll perform for you, then we get to the crowdsourcing part of this, this presentation. Okay, so.
This allows you, while you're pumping, to be answering your emails, getting work done, or eating lunch.
Thank you.
There's only one developed country in the world that does not offer paid maternity leave. And that's women.
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 I cannot and I will not give up my family time. I cannot and I will not give up my family time.
Nobody's being excluded based upon gender.
I cherish women.
The Trump administration is committed to empowering women in the workplace.
I cherish women.
The Trump administration is committed to empowering women in the workplace.
Women.
Women.
What's one of the hottest parties young women are attending these days? It's egg freezing parties. It's a combo of girls' night out and learning about the process of delaying motherhood by freezing their eggs. For example, there was a recent party called Let's Chill held at a hotel in Manhattan. The party was sponsored by a company that works to connect women with in vitro fertilization centers. The women attending sipped cocktails, ate hors d'oeuvres, and learned what freezing their eggs entailed and why it might be a good idea, like if they want to put off having kids so they can focus on their education, career, or finding a solid partner. The fact is, a lot of women don't want to wake up one day in their 40s and realize they've missed their chance to have children.
So you don't think it's, I don't know, do we have time to wait, or how long does it take actually? Yeah. Oh. Huh? We can wait, yeah. But maybe you should plug it in then. I guess. Maybe I don't know if we need some help here. Oh, okay. So it's something else then. Okay. 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 So thank you. Okay. So if there are any questions or answers to her question.
I need answers.
Yeah, she needs answers. Okay.
Better?
I don't know.
Get it on.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
I need to get my paper though. If this is like a question where you're gonna like an answer where you're gonna be like talking about this.
Yeah,
What?
there's the live stream, which will be also like
Okay.
not so live anymore, but still
Not so
available
live
footage.
anymore. I can replay it to that,
Yeah.
and then copy down the names. Okay, so
Yeah, so you asked for references for other artists who've worked with women technology.
not women necessarily, like any musician who's ever used domestic technologies or
Yeah.
Yes.
So there was, I'm not sure they're still active, but there was this collective in Montreal called Women with Kitchen Appliances.
Mhm.
And they made different performances with that.
Mhm.
So that's a bit an older project. Then I recently read about Margaret Shadle. She's at Stony Brook. They are now also doing like making different projects with repurposing or reimagining like technology that's often used by women.
I believe I talked to her at NIME.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
She present,
so-
yeah. So those are the two that immediately popped up
Okay,
in my head.
cool.
So.
Thank you.
Any more comments, questions? We have an extra. There's one there.
Yeah, thank you for your brave performance.
Okay, I've
That's
done
really
it
great.
several times.
Yeah.
So
No, it's
I
great.
feel less stressed about it.
At the University of Oslo, Teja Sweeney Kelkar has been using sort of kitchen instruments to resonate portions of her body, as far as I understand. I haven't seen it live yet, but I will be seeing it live at the
So it's like it's hearing the kitchen instrument through the body.
somehow, yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, she might be an interesting contact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for your performance here.
Hi.
Natasha Deals at the University of San Diego. She has a couple performances. I Love Myself Fully and Unconditionally is one of her performance pieces that was put in Darmstadt in 2018, and it's a pretty interesting piece that sort of explores the house and how we move through houses.
Okay.
Hi. Hello, Alina.
again.
Yeah, thanks. It's the second time I see your performance. I really
Mhm.
see it as, intervention art and this kind of politics fueled. And I just wanted to mention a gallery in Eindhoven. It's a contemporary art gallery, a really small one. But when I was there was this kind of, for some months, permanent, really huge installation all about, this feminist manifesto and a lot of women artists working in contemporary art.
Yeah,
I can maybe pass you.
I'm fairly familiar with like feminist art overall. I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in. I'm sorry to be like.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
What I'm interested in is really about like in music, kitchen gadgets or like gadgets from or machines. So I remember when I did an exchange semester in Helsinki. There was a performance with the dishwasher in the cafeteria by a group called The User. Does anybody know them? Because okay, yeah. Anyway, so I'm kind of looking forward to people or like looking. I'm really trying to mine you here. So I'm interested in performances like that one, like the dishwasher, or So thanks for like all suggestions.
I have a question for you.
Oh, okay, question. That's fine too.
First, thank you very much for your performance. I'm quite curious about your background. How did you come to this? So a bit of the contact.
Okay,
in that
so
sense would be really interesting.
So I've been making art for like 20 years and electronic art. So my last project was a feminist robot. This is a feminist project with like feminist performance project. So the feminist robot puts pie charts onto like paper pie charts onto real edible pies. And yeah, so it's it's also about the workplace. So you can the pie charts are about like statistics about the gender distribution in art galleries, but also in art and tech environments and in technology environments. And so you can have the pie chart be put on your pie, and then using the robot takes a picture for Twitter and also gives you an address label where you can like send the pie to the place where the data originated, or you can take it to your own workplace and talk about, you know, gender and the workplace. So yeah, so I've been doing this type of work for a while. And yeah, not recently, but like he's 5 years old. I had a kid, and so I used this breast pump, and I kind of interpreted the sounds of it as a kind of angsty techno. So I thought initially I thought this would be like a performance that could like go, you know, for like an hour, but then I realized like, no, this is not what this is. And so this is what it turned out. So in this case, I made it slightly shorter than it usually is. Usually it's about 20 minutes or like 15. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see the rest of it. Yeah, I just actually moved here from the United States to Norway, and it was really striking to then see all of this like extremely absurd footage. Of course, I mean it's a very politicized thing. But I was just wondering. I guess it's not a specific question, but can you just speak to like it later in the performance? Are there kind of absurd observations or footage from other countries, or are you mining most of that from the U.S.?
Actually, this is interesting. So I just played this in Canada, and because, yeah, so some of the reactions are like, you're summarizing really well what it's like in the US, and we in our country don't have this. But so I went to Canada and I asked the people in the room, so what's it like for you? And it turned out they were like, oh, this totally resonates for us. So one of them was, even though in Canada has universal health care, you probably know, Canada has universal health care, they have, you know, maternity leave that is like mandated, and compared in the US where maternity leave is like up to your employer's mercy essentially, and so so this made me kind of like I think sort of people may, depending also what their situation is. So like one of the people in the audience was a woman who has like a precarious kind of employment. She's like sort of self-employed or like contracting. And she said that this totally resonates with her because she doesn't, like, if she got pregnant, it would be a world of difficulty, and sort of the precariousness of it all totally resonated with her. Also, like I mean, I have excellent healthcare and a maternity leave, and etc. But like, I pumped to be able to like go have exhibitions. So I had to like, because you cannot just like milk yourself forever. I needed to sort of come up with a strategy to pump for like maybe 2 months, so I could be away for like a week from my kid, and so. So basically, like, regardless of what you are, depending on what you want to do, whether you just want to be away for like a week, which is like, you should totally get a vacation, right? Or whether you're like, your work requires it, you might have to pump even if you have like a 1 or 2 year maternity leave. So I think, although, I mean, I've encountered this a lot, but I think that, you know, different types of situations, what I'm trying to say is that regardless where you are, I think that like transitioning from one state of like having no children to having children and like being, I mean, if you are taking a maternity leave, you're there for them quite a lot, and your partner might not be. You like everything shifts, right? And so it's this kind of mixed message that yes, you can be everything, but you also have to be everything. And having to be everything is like incredibly hard. And so this is what this performance is about. And I don't think this is so country specific. So I'm from Switzerland and we're supposedly much more advanced, but really not. Like it's a capitalist hellhole. We can talk about capitalism more and like how, you know, women in capitalism, but this is like, that's what it's about. So yes.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move on. I think we have our next colleagues by video conference. Is that right? Sorry?
Here, Daft Pump. So that was Daft Pump, right? And I think there's a last song that that I would be playing, but only for like maybe a minute or so. Should we do that or should we cut it off here?
Exactly. We have time? We have time.
We have time. Okay.
Yeah.
So this will take a moment because I think it may have actually died. I mean, I'm literally getting a blank screen. So, and everything is plugged in. So I'm not entirely sure. I think this computer may have been the death of it. So just a second, I'll try it again and. No, okay, no, it's coming back. So prior to going on this trip, I noticed that like the battery was dying essentially. And yes.
Thank you. At your comments, you mentioned flying, and I remember Alyssa Milano would bring a lot of attention that you can bring her breast pump milk that she had pre-pumped onto planes.
Mm-hmm.
Have you encountered anything that? And how are you perceived in America, since it's kind of taboo? Breast pumping.
Pumping in the US versus pumping elsewhere?
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same. I mean, it depends on like where. I don't see a difference. Mm-hmm. And I've pumped on airplanes, so it's like these scenes where people have pumped is pretty much what it's like. Like you just go, if there's no room available, you just go to a bathroom or I don't know.
Yeah. But could you bring pre-pumped milk?
I haven't. So the way I did it was I pumped and I dumped. So I pre-pumped so that I would have enough milk left for like 1 or 2 weeks, however long I was gone for like an exhibition install or something. Mm-hmm. And then while I was in the exhibition install, I had to pump periodically to just keep it flowing. And then I threw away the milk, because it didn't make sense to somehow accumulate it.
Yeah.
Because the duration was too long for it to, you know, it would have been too much of a. So I have to log into. Okay. So while we're waiting, do you want to hear a performance art joke? So how long does it take for performance artists to screw in a light bulb? Screw in a light bulb for performance art artists. I don't know. I was only there for the first 4 hours. So I have this like, do you want to know who I have this joke from? I'm trying to start Ableton, by the way. Do you know, like, should we really do this? Okay. So do you know who told me this joke? So I heard it at a performance by Marina Abramovich. So you have a secondhand joke here. So something also had gone wrong with her with her visualization and or her performance or whatever, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to hear a performance art joke?" So that's how it is. I warned you. It's taking forever. Yes. So do you have a book full? Because this is going to take a long time.
So Michael Meyerhoff from Hamburg, he uses electric toothbrushes in almost all of his performances. He calls them schwingende Systemen.
Okay.
Let's see, Matthias Karnebitter, a Vienna-based composer. He has a piece for 5 trombones that uses the tubes that from washing machines, so that the trombone sound comes from underwater.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and Pierre Yodlowski, he dresses in one of his pieces the conductor with 2 irons. So he has to conduct while holding 2 heavy irons in his hand.
Okay, thank you. And this is taking forever. Do you really want to do this? I'm not.
We have one more tip. There's actually a Norwegian band that uses home appliances like refrigerators
Okay.
and cookers. It's Hurra Torpedo.
I will come with you.
It's very
with. Yeah. So.
There's also another Norwegian band, Kaiser's Orchestra. They play on really old appliances and broken appliances.
Okay.
And they do it live, and that's really cool. They also play on like oil barrels and everything.
Okay. Who plays on what? Landscape number 4. By John Cage. Okay. Landscape number 4 by John Cage. So what is landscape? What is landscape number 4 about?
Yes, a stopwatch, and then you play some different items. Some of them are out.
Okay. So this is going nowhere. I think I'm too stressed for this computer. So
okay.
So we're ending it here. Okay.
You anyway. So now we have 2 colleagues from Portugal online, I hope. Luís Leite and Amanda Anastácio. They're going to present Solitária, gestural interface for puppetry performance.
Hello, Trondheim. Can you hear me?
Oh, lots of feedback.
Oh, outer space.
Okay. I'll just switch to Portuguese for a second. Não sei se é o Luís, se é o...
Sou Luís.
É o Luís, olá Luís. Eu estou a moderar a sessão, não preciso estar a controlar o tempo, pois não? Vocês têm isso controlado?
Não.
Obrigada.
Perfeito. Está muito eco? Tenho que baixar o volume?
Não, agora está bom. Pode começar quando quiser. Obrigada.
Sim. Welcome. My name is Luis Leite, known as Grifo, and I'm presenting this session, Solitária, and I'm calling from School of Arts and Media Design in Portugal. I wish I was there. I know I'm missing a lot of great presentations, but I was not able to travel, and Amandio also. So a special thanks to Philippe Lopes that was almost presenting this session, but we were able to connect and make this presentation remotely. So thank you for coming. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. You now, I think you are seeing a kind of a bird, a grifo. Okay, now is I think you are seeing my screen and the sound also. So I will start my presentation.
Sorry, the only sound is your voice. Is that right?
Okay, so let's.
Is that supposed to be?
No, probably I forgot to press a button here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, now. Okay, so can you hear the sound?
No,
okay,
right. Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Solitária is a performance that employs puppetry techniques to manipulate digital media. Solitária is a creation of Alma Daram, directed by Amandio and Anastasio, and which I had the pleasure to collaborate. The paper describes the project concept, the methodology, and the outcomes. This presentation will focus on our approach and reveals parts of the performance. Solitária explores the human loneliness in the solitary confinement. How do we move, see, listen, and think in a place where there is no light? The absence of light removes any spatial temporal reference and draws us to an unbalanced world. Our approach was focused on the human gestures. Later, we had the idea to explore the art of puppetry to manipulate the digital media, working with motion sensors. In terms of visual creation, we seek a graphical and minimal approach, focusing on the emptiness and silence. The main visual element was the line, a component related to the prison bars. Animated text was used to characterize our memories, and moving silhouettes as a representation of ghosts of human spirits. In terms of interaction design, it was based on a space-time approach, exploring the body motion, in particular the relationship between body parts, distance between hands, and body localization in space. Our initial setup for the installation was based on a hypercube, and then on 3 screens, and then the setup was redesigned to become more flexible and simpler with just 1 screen. This setup was developed to present the solitary constraints, the limit area in which the human body can barely move. Our body becomes the only connection to the physical world, the only sensor capable of recognizing the physical space. The space was divided into 9 squares of 1 meter each that were used to segment play. They were mapped to different functions, allowing the performer to trigger specific actions. The world space, or the global coordinates, allowed the manipulation of parameters taking as reference the localization of the actor in the stage, useful for site-specific actions such as triggering behaviors. On the other hand, the local space, the position of the body parts are calculated based on the pelvis of the actor, independent from his location in stage, which is useful for gesture recognition. We develop a gestural vocabulary for the play based on the hand motion. This vocabulary attempts to express feelings such as pain, fear, disorientation. Each feeling is represented by a gesture mapped to an audiovisual behavior. In Solitária, we assumed sound as an object, as a puppet that can be manipulated by the puppeteer. Our intention from the beginning was to explore sound manipulation with puppetry techniques, which we call sound puppetry. We used Kinect sensor to track the body motion with a software called Kinectar, which is in the image. One of the most important aspects in sound puppetry is the mapping between the body and the sound property. We developed a sound vocabulary for this mapping, allowing the performer to play music, trigger sounds, navigate through the waveform with his hands, or to specialize the sound in the set. We introduced a waveform navigation technique based on the hand movement, allowing the performer to jump from distant parts of the waveform. For instance, to travel between words of the waveform, deconstruction the text, creating new sentence, allowing the improvisation. For the sound navigation, we used Ableton Live. The play was divided into 6 main moments that characterize the evolution stage of the prisoner, each with its unique mapping preset, all using performance-driven media. This stage refers to transfiguration, hallucinations, and self-control. And these images are from the creative process. Disconstruction, memories, and mutilation. Here is performed by Mandio. Here we reveal some fragments from the play, pictures and videos taken from rehearsal. So the image quality may be somehow not in best quality. Well, the play begins with a signal that becomes highly irregular, although now it's regular. In the first stage, we explore the configuration of the human body using light, shadows, and trails. We are thrown into an empty and tiny space without light, become a shadow of ourselves. These videos were taken with a smartphone. This part was made with open frameworks. At this stage, the character seeks landmarks in the solitary confinement. Our body attempts to recognize the space in which we are closed, touching the walls, the objects. In this stage, the performer manipulates a physical puppet in front of a camera. We use Quartz Composer and True Tetra video synthesizer to make this kind of image with lines, pixelated. The search continues, searching for a new existence, for a soul reborn. This puppet was actually made in a 3D printer. In the last transformation stage, I don't know if it's too hot, this last transformation stage, our body becomes something strange under permanent discussion. Here the performer becomes the puppet itself. Self-control stage, the visuals influence the sound. The performer manipulates lines that generate the sound pattern. The manipulation is very, very subtle and requires balance. For this stage, we use pure data, software designed for sound. Okay, the manipulation of these lines require dexterity, as in puppetry or as in music when playing instruments. The visuals were made with an application called Emotion from a French artist. All of this is made in real time. When we challenge our manipulation skills during a long period of time, we may become exhausted and may become defeated by the increasing complexity and concentration. This actually is like an exercise of dexterity and concentration. Here we begin to use barbaric gestures to express ourselves until we are consumed by madness. The text reacts to the body motion. This is a rehearsal, so the performer is actually speaking to the staff, to the technical staff. Here we want to forget our long-distance memories that disturb us, and we seek for an end. The text follows the hands in real time. At the end, we become the puppet, and the puppet actually rests and rests forever. Okay, so thank you. I would like to answer all the questions that you have.
Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. Are there questions, comments? I think we have one person over there.
Hi, Luis. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Hi. First of all, thanks. Awesome results. I would like to ask you about the software you mentioned from the French artist. Emotion, was it?
Yes.
Can you please describe me how to write? Because I tried to to search on Google, I couldn't find it. It really
Yeah,
interests me. Yeah.
You can, you might, I believe that you cannot find it anymore.
Ah, right.
This software is made, the French artist called Adrian, and
Okay.
it's from, he made several versions between 2000 and, don't remember, 6 and
Okay.
4 or 5 years from there he was developing updates. It's an incredible software. I can actually share it but it's
Okay.
no longer available in the internet because I don't know, I think he removed it from the internet because it is an unbelievable software that you
Yeah.
can actually work with any kind of interface. It works with Kinect, with the lip motion, with the Wiimotes, with Tuyo
Yeah.
protocol. So you can actually connect anything to that software, and it reacts to text, to geometries, particles. It's absolutely amazing, and it was a free software made by these artists. They developed for their creations, so you may find them. I can actually share the link from their
Yeah,
creations.
I'd appreciate
But,
that. Thanks. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The really, really beautiful work. I have a question. This is not a very precise question, but still, let me try. It seems like a lot of the presentations, as I can see them, are 2D projections. But from what I can see, there's a lot of kind of 3-dimensional thinking behind this. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about how you're thinking about the kind of the spatio-temporal nature of your work, or kind of this both space and time here, and the 3-dimensionality of the space when you're working also with a flat projection.
Yes, that's a very, very interesting question and tricky one, because we actually, first of all, we would like to use a hypercube with all faces, and that would probably the challenge was to place the visuals in a 3-dimensional stage. So we work with only one face and a bidimensional almost every part, but the interaction is all made in 3D. So we map 3D interaction to bidimensional visuals, and the sound is similar. We work sometimes with 2 dimensions, but also we explore 3 dimensionals. There are the emotion. The software actually works with a 3-dimensional set. Although, for instance, the text that we project, it can be it can flow in a 3D cube. We didn't use it, but it actually can the interaction can be in 3D, so we could actually navigate in the space through the text plane and use some kind of physical forces to place the text in the 3 dimensions. So almost the artwork, the visual work is in 2 dimensions, so he had to map it the 3 dimensions, the several squares to a part of the plane, the bidimensional plane, or the visuals, a little bit in a similar way as we made in sound. Also, almost in every part, we use sound as one plane only. So we didn't have several layers of sound in the working on, except in the part we use pure data, because it was like particles that were flowing in space that generating the sound. So the sound actually was made in 3D. I don't know if I answered the question. It is a little bit tricky.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was a bit interested because you start with the concept of puppetry, but then in the first scenes I found that the translation from the gestures of the performer to the image was very one-to-one, sort of. It was the gestures were actually the same, like reflected in the image. With the same human form, whereas puppetry seems to be more about animating inanimate objects which are sort of human-like but not exactly, and the gestures to do the animation are often quite different from than the eventual movement of these puppets. And I don't know. So to me, like the first scenes, like more reflected like different things I've seen with dance and tech and image, where they replicate images and then transform them often, like from the movement to the screen and create interactions there. But I was just wondering, like, what your view on that was, or maybe also what's your background or sort of way into this performance was. Whether that was maybe more in puppetry and then going into digital media.
Yeah, very, very interesting question. Actually, I'm more fascinated with not one-to-one mapping. So it's like when you work with motion capture in movies and you are recreating a bit human or manipulating a spider. How can an actor manipulate with his body a spider? That would be very creative. So that's the challenge. We found that challenge in sound puppetry because we didn't have a one-to-one mapping. So it was like a more creative and exploratory. And we almost lost one residence just exploring sound puppetry, which is kind of amazing. So working with tiny little movements in our hands and creating sounds and manipulating them, it's worth it. Now there are parts in the play or in the performance that explored one-to-one mapping. It is very interesting because we started with Amandio in our artistic residence to the creative process, and then it was Susanna who actually the performance actress that is now playing. And the first time she attempt to explore this puppetry with digital media, there was a switch. The projector was in reverse, so but she didn't knew it. So she when her hand was moving upwards, the motion was downwards. So it was like something in the reverse. But she thought it was it was made like that. We wanted to be that. So it's and she worked very well with this kind of a reverse thing, moving things to one side and they were to the other side, which actually is a very rich manipulation and interesting because you have distance from this. You have to think before manipulating, like a puppeteer. A puppeteer, especially when you manipulate a string puppet, you need to know when you pull or push the string, what is going to happen. And the puppet itself, because of the gravity forces and the pendulum movement, influences you, and you have to react to his motion. So it's like a loop. You manipulate the puppet, but the puppet manipulates you. So here it's more or less the same. So it's very important to have a live visual feedback in terms of visuals and sound.
Are there more questions or comments? No. So thank you very much, Luis. And we close
Thank you.
this afternoon sessions. A round of applause for everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Maybe Oyvind can tell us more about the late event.
So thank you all for being here for this session. We have the concert at Rockheim with a keynote by Rebecca Fiebrink at 7. I hope to see you all there. And also we start again tomorrow morning at 10. See you back then.